Welcome to the Simple Finance channel, where we help you get the most out of your money.
Hey guys, and welcome to the show. Today we're going to be discussing what I like to call the bucket system. For those of you unfamiliar with what I'm referring to, so this system is where you put money. Something that I'll see commonly is people bring up, where should I be putting money? And I'm not necessarily referring to investments, I'm more talking to which types of accounts. So with this system, the breakdown is your first money should go into this bucket until it fills up, and then it goes to the next bucket, exactly like the image here. So our first bucket is going to be our 401k up to the match. So a common thing with companies is that they will match up to a certain amount. Some common amounts are possibly 3% of your salary or 5% of your salary. Your first place for your money needs to go your 401k up to your match. And there's a few distinct great reasons why you would want to do this. The most important is that with a 401k match, they're giving you a guaranteed 100% return on your money. If you put in $1,000, they're going to match that with $1,000. And there's nowhere else you can get that kind of a guaranteed return. Another great thing with this is that this is tax deferred money, meaning you're not paying taxes on this money. These are pre-tax dollars going in here. And another great thing about pre-tax dollars is that right now you're likely in a higher tax bracket than you will be in retirement. So you get to do something called tax arbitrage. What this means is that you're putting in money when you're in one tax bracket and pulling it out at a lower tax bracket. With a 401k, you're not paying any taxes until you pull out this money in retirement. Another great thing with your 401k is that they have a great asset protection. What I mean by that is if you get sued, they have a very hard time accessing your 401k, whereas they would have a much easier time accessing an IRA, or even an easier time, especially at a bank account or a taxable account. Our next bucket is going to be high yield debt. Typically for most people, this is credit cards. If you have any sort of credit card debt, you need to be paying this off before you proceed any further. With our 401k, we had a 100% guaranteed return. With credit cards, paying off debt, you're going to get whatever the return is for the APR on your credit card. A lot of times this can be 16%, 18%, or sometimes even more. And there's no way long-term investing in the markets you're going to beat the return on paying off your credit cards. I would recommend in general paying off any debt over 7% before you proceed any further. This next one is the least sexy one on the list. This is the one people typically try and get around or complain about online. So people often complain about having an emergency fund because your money is not making you really any money, especially with current interest rates being so low. A lot of checking and savings accounts are offering 1% or sometimes even less. But I still think you need an emergency fund. The main reason you want to have an emergency fund is to prevent yourself from having to sell your investments. Typically, people get laid off when markets are down. We go into a recession and you lose your job. So, for example, if you were to get laid off during the 2008 or 2009 financial crisis and have to sell investments, you're going to be selling them at a 50% loss from their all-time highs. This is not the time you want to be selling investments. So I would recommend you keep an emergency fund. Typically, people will recommend 3 to 6 months of living expenses. I would say this is going to really depend on the stability of your job. If you work at a job that's extremely stable, there's no way you get laid off, for example, you're a doctor or something like that, then I would say you could probably go on the shorter end, 3 months. If you're doing gig work or running your own business, things like that, I would err towards more the 6 months with this one. Another disclaimer that I would add with this one is that you should not invest your emergency fund. An emergency fund is for emergencies. I would keep this in a very liquid asset, treasury bonds less than 1 month, or a savings or checking account. You do not want to be having your emergency fund in the stock market or long duration bonds. The next bucket here is going to be the Roth IRA. So a Roth IRA is great for a whole bunch of reasons. So a Roth IRA is a post-tax retirement account. What I mean by that is that this is money you've already paid taxes on So it would be money like from your bank account, not coming directly out of your paycheck. So the main advantages with this are that you do not pay any taxes in retirement when you pull this money out. You've already paid all your taxes. So most people, if you're under 50, will put in $6,000 per year, and then this money is able to grow tax-free and be pulled out tax-free in retirement. There are a couple things you should know about the Roth IRA. There are income limits related to the Roth IRA. So as of 2022, if you're over $129,000 as a single person or $204,000 married, you're going to want to do a backdoor Roth IRA. I'll have another video on how to do this in the future, but for right now, just know that you will need to do a backdoor Roth IRA if you're over these limits. So another thing with this is that you need to have earned income. For example, if you're a college student and you do not have any earned income, you can't do a Roth IRA. So you can contribute up to how much you have earned. So as long as you have earned $6,000 per year, you can max your Roth IRA. Another thing that's really great with this account is that let's say you work but your spouse does not work, you can still contribute to their Roth IRA. So you can both put in $6,000 per year even if only one of you is working. The next one on our list is going to be an HSA, or a health savings account. Essentially, this is an account that the government has given you to put in pre-tax money and let it grow tax-free, and then you can pull out this money tax-free in the future to use it for healthcare. A way that a lot of people use this account is they save their receipts for healthcare, and then they pull out the money in the future once it has had time to grow. Even though that's not really the original intent of the way that this is used, this is a very common way that people are currently using it. So the main buzzwords you'll hear with an HSA is that it's triple tax negative, and what that means is that this is money that goes in pre-tax, so you have not paid any taxes on it. It then is able to grow tax-free, and then again, as long as you use this money for healthcare, you're able to pull it out without paying any taxes. So you're avoiding taxes on contributions, gains, or withdrawals. So some of the caveats to know with this type of account is that only people with high deductible health insurance plans qualify for this. So you would need to contact your human resources office to see if you qualify for an HSA account. Now we're heading back to our 401k. If you remember, the first bucket was our 401k just up to the match. Now we're going to be going the 401k up to our employee contribution limit. The current limit for 2022 is $20,500 per year. So within your 401k, you're going to want to look for your low cost funds within the plan. Most funds will have something like an S&P 500 plan or a low cost target date fund. I would really try and avoid your high fee active managed funds within your 401k. And unfortunately, some 401ks just have really crappy options in general. So hopefully you have a low cost option within your 401k, but now I would max your 401k. The reasons for this is that this is pre-tax money. So you have not paid any taxes on this, and it does not show up on your income. For example, if you made $100,000 and you paid $20,000 into your 401k, your taxable income would only be $80,000. For a lot of people, this can be a huge tax savings. And then in retirement, you're going to be pulling out this money typically at a much lower tax rate. So you can really save a lot of money in taxes by using your 401k. Once we make it this far, there's not really a clear choice anymore. And first off, congratulations. If you made it all the way down to this bucket, that means you've already put away at least $26,500 into retirement accounts. And you're likely going to be doing extremely well once you hit retirement. At this point, though, we have a few different options on where you want to go. And this is going to largely depend on your risk tolerance and views on investments. So for me personally, this is where I would like to go into a few of these. So you could do low yield debt. This is going to be things like refinance student loans at a few percentage points, maybe pay more on your mortgage, which is likely at 3 or 4%. Or you could do other things like start adding money to a taxable account. One of the biggest problems I see people do in general is that they start putting money into a taxable account before they've maxed their retirement accounts. In general, a lot of people will push this for reasons like, oh, I want to retire early, I want more access to my money, etc. In general, I think this is a pretty bad idea. I think that there's so many exceptions that allow you to access money earlier within your retirement accounts. For example, if you retire early and you want to have access to your Roth IRA, you can do what's called substantially equal periodic payments, or SEPP, that will give you access to your Roth IRA even if you retire early. I don't think there's very many good argumentative points on where you would want to use a taxable account before you would want to max out your retirement accounts. The only options I could see where this would maybe be an option is if, for example, you have extremely high fees within your 401k. And by this, I'm talking 2.5% or more to really cancel out the advantages of that retirement account. So in general, the options here would be to fund your taxable account, to put money towards low yield debt, mortgage, student loans, things like that. Or you could start branching into alternative asset classes. This might be things like real estate, commodities like gold and silver, or really whatever you want. In general, I would say that as long as you've put away enough before, it's not going to make a huge difference what you decide to do here. If you're more debt averse, I would recommend you maybe start paying on debt, whereas if you're more wanting risk, then you maybe would want to go towards a taxable account or real estate here. So just to recap, here's kind of the overview of our different buckets. So our first bucket was our 401k up to the match. The next bucket is our high yield debt, anything over 7%, credit cards, etc. Then the next thing we're going to want to do is build an emergency fund. Then we want to move to our Roth IRA or backdoor Roth IRA, depending on your income. Next thing is if you qualify in HSA. Again, you may or may not qualify. I personally do not qualify for this one. Then we have our 401k up to our contribution limit of $20,500. And then after that, you have a few different options. You could start a taxable account, start paying off low yield debt, or start moving into other areas like real estate. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing. It makes a huge difference. Also, just the disclaimer, this video is for entertainment purposes only and should not be considered personalized legal or financial advice. Until next time, thanks.